Hello and welcome to Legalese. I'm Ernie Hyde, your host, and Legalese is brought to you by the Northern Middlesex Bar Association on a monthly basis. And this month we're going to be talking about counterfeit goods and services, a subject that I have wanted to get into with my guest for several months now, and finally have cornered him and convinced him to join us. And his name is Jerry DeCristofaro. Jerry's been on the show multiple times, probably second to the number that I've been on, helping us out in all different aspects of criminal law as well. Jerry is of counsel to Miranda and Fleming in Medford, Massachusetts, and recently retired from the Massachusetts State Police after 35 years of service with them. And his last endeavor with them was the director of legal training at New Braintree, right? Academy for the Mass State Police. So welcome, Jerry, again.
Pleasure to be here.
Okay, and we're going to be talking about counterfeit goods because when I asked anybody out there have a great idea for a show, you came up with it. And to me it was a great subject to come up with because this law has been in effect since 1998 in Massachusetts. And I noticed that when I talk to people about counterfeit goods, of course, everybody knows that there are such things, but they don't know the magnitude of this law. And the interesting thing that I wanted to get into before we even started talking about the subject was a WCBB news story on the raid in Lawrence, Mass. Recently. Interesting, though, the person who was doing the interviewing of people who were in that area interviewed a woman that happened to be at the scene, and her comments, and I just want to set the tone here. Her comments were, I've shopped for some purses. Some of the purses fell apart because, of course, it's fraud. It's fake. That's kind of an admission in this particular case because if you read the law, it's not only those that sell, market, manufacture, et cetera, these items or goods and services, but those who use them. Mm-hmm. So tell us what your experience has been.
Well, I came into this, got involved in this back in the very early 90s as a state police officer. At the time, they were offering a cross-designation program where certain officers would be sworn in as U.S. Customs officers, primarily to enforce goods that were being shipped in violation of customs laws. Mm-hmm. And of course, a large part of that was also counterfeit goods. And at the time, there was an emphasis on certain goods that were being manufactured overseas and then sold here in the United States, and revenues from those sales were going back to fund like Hamas and other certain terrorist organizations. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But then, as I became involved with it over the years, I saw a lot of issues that really kind of made not only question the statute, the enforcement efforts, but sometimes the whole way the enforcement was structured, the way the statute's structured, the lack of enthusiasm. It's riddled with all sorts of issues that I've been trying to come to terms with over the many years. And mm-hmm. having been able to look at this from both sides, from both as an enforcement officer and now as a defense attorney in these cases, it's very intriguing and challenging as to what's going on and how it's not a clear-cut crime in a lot of ways. Traditionally, this was a civil offense. Right. The goods were either seized as a customs issue, which was sort of as you know, is a separate government function, mm-hmm. In a way kind of a little bit outside of criminal enforcement. And then if manufacturers or copyright or trademark holders found that items, be it either domestically or foreign produced items violating their trademark or copyright. They would have plenty of civil remedies to go after them,
Right.
to seize the objects, and it would be held in dealt with in a civil court. Then all of a sudden in the 90s, you started seeing a lot of lobbying to involve police in the enforcement of this, which kind of gave me a questionable taste as to why that's going on. And the way you had big business now using the police because they weren't satisfied with I guess the satisfaction they're getting in the civil courts. At least that's what I speculate.
Or the expense that it goes.
Or the expense that they go to.
Yeah, right.
And if it was a crime, anything that of course harms the consumer, I'm all for sticking up for the victim. As a police officer for over 30 years, you know, I've always defended the victims and championed victims' rights and circumstances. But in this case, you see, not only is there fraud going on, the consumer is certainly defrauded in a lot of instances, but you also have an insatiable appetite by the American public for cheap goods that drives an entire system where the government, for example, as an example, the government, U.S. government gives special trade status, favored status to China. China, as far as international, as imports go, that contain trademark issues or violations. China has been one of the leading importers and manufacturers of trade of these type of bootleg items, we'll call them. Not that it's limited by any means to them, or that it's even limited internationally to this problem. But the very fact that China gets preferred trade status, that the customs agencies and the enforcement agencies in the federal level have been cut back, so they can't do their job, and all of a sudden you have the state and local offices being called upon to get involved in this. And I just don't understand, you know, and certainly if the consumer's being harmed, you know, I'm all for it. But there are so many instances where the consumer isn't really being harmed, and the profit margin over these trademark enforcements for big businesses can be extraordinary. For example, I had a client who was selling pencils that they got with Disney logo that were bootleg, you know, those pencils were working as good as any other pencil for us. So it's not a product deficiency or anything like that. Right. With the buyer beware. You get what you see.
Right.
Now, certainly it was a trademark infringement on Disney's part.
Of course.
But you know, why Disney could have come in with they're sort of bounty hunters on the private side and private investigator side that have been around handling these things, and they could have done that that way there. And I have to question why police are now becoming so involved. Of course, if it's tied to funding terrorist operations, sure. But the use of resources in that case, where the federal government isn't stepping up to the plate to stop it at the importation stages, I have to question, you know, the state use of resources for that.
Yeah, I noticed that when we originally talked about this, we had a number of goods that, frankly, I hadn't even thought of that seemed to be on top of the list of bootleg goods or counterfeit goods. Which, if you want to go through the list, olive oil.
Olive oil intrigued me as being Italian heritage.
Yeah.
I assumed that the olive oil I was using frequently was, if it said olive oil, it was olive oil. Then come to find out, back in about a decade ago, the mafia infiltrated the olive oil exportation business, and they were cutting it with canola oil. So it wasn't unhealthy, but nonetheless, you didn't know what you were getting. It was just about 6 months ago I bought olive oil inexpensively at a certain not-to-be-named big box store. And and I happened to read online and said, you know, if you want to find out if it's really olive oil, put it in a refrigerator and see if it congeals. If it isn't, it may not be. Try to light it on fire. The flash point for olive oil is very low as compared to the other oils. If it lights easy, it is. If it doesn't, then it probably isn't. Yeah. So lo and behold, I had this gallon of stuff in my refrigerator, and it was flunking all the authenticity tests. Then I looked at the small print, and it said a blend of oils, even though the label said
olive oil,
extra virgin olive oil, and that was it on the label in big print. And the little fine print it said. So that kind of, I mean, I was upset, I've been defrauded in that case, and that kind of. And then, I bought a knockoff brand, Melman's mayonnaise once, and as opposed to Hellman's, which is a well-known product.
Sure.
And I could pour Melman's out. I can't pour Hellman's out. But I knew it was inexpensive. I tried it. I won't try it again. Vitamins. We're seeing more and more research.
This is a big one. This is a big one.
Everyone's afraid to say, they're not really regulated. Are buyers really getting what they think they're getting?
Right. Right.
Cigarettes. Cigarettes have long been even when I started in the cigarettes, the counterfeiting of cigarettes, because they're such expensive items. And even
Especially now, yeah.
And even the counterfeiting of the stamps, the tax stamps that go on it.
Right.
Were at one point were traced to revenues going back to terrorist organizations from the sale of. So that's something people don't even think about. You would never recognize. A lot of people don't even realize that some of the things they're buying may not be authentic. Artwork, there was a big scandal in the art community a number of years ago where hundreds of masterpieces were forged.
Yeah,
and now the ability, it set the art world upside down. And then, of course, you've had most people looking for who can't afford Coach handbags, Gucci items, Rolex watches.
Yep.
Going out, and most people
North Face clothes.
and now we're back. North Face is is currently a big.
Yep.
And most people, a lot of people, when they're buying, if you're going to buy a Rolex watch, if you know that's a good brand, then you also know they're expensive. So if you're getting a Rolex watch sold to you for
$200
for a couple or $50 or whatever,
$50,
then you should be able to suspect that something's probably up with it. Buy from a reputable dealer. But even reputable dealers are being caught up with the advance of technology, printers and copy machines that can counterfeit labels and things so incredibly detailed. A poor manufacturer could be importing things to sell in a little mom and pop store and never know it. And yet they'll get caught up in these sweeps because it takes an expert to figure out if there is a violation. Right. And then all of a sudden thousands of dollars worth of inventory is seized by the government, and they're out and now they're subject to criminal fines and penalties. It was hard enough for small businesses when they had to deal with the civil side of the forfeiture, but now all of a sudden they can go to jail on it.
Right.
So
okay. And so typically, though, what you look for in these types of products are poor quality, and as you say, you keep referring to buyer beware, and it's really it. I mean, if you knew or should have known, it comes down to that. If you know that something sells for $500 and you're getting it for $50, there's something wrong with that deal.
And that's very accurate. Then there's a whole range of goods that are not as good a quality as some, like you might have a shirt, say a T-shirt with a Bruins logo on. Well, it could be a very cheap T-shirt made in some sweatshop overseas, but it's still an authentic trademark because it'll be sanctioned by the NHL. And you'll see the little logo on it. So it's authentic. It's not a violation. But is that an indication of quality? No. And on the other hand, you can buy items that certain manufacturers who do only produce quality items. And when knockoffs come on that undermine that, it certainly is it can affect it could blemish their brand. So it's just you don't know until you look into the individual issues concerning every single product, and it takes an expert to figure out really what where you are in relation to the numerous items available to consumer.
Yeah, but I think most consumers are smart enough to understand that if you're at a flea market, such as Lawrence, in this particular case recently. And you're seeing really, really cheap goods, and there's a lot of them there. There's a problem. I gotta believe that at that point, especially if you're looking for a Gucci bag, you gotta know at that point that you're not getting a Gucci bag for $50.
I agree with you. I think
Right? I mean, there's no common sense that would lead you to believe that that's real.
I agree. The location, flea markets, people selling these out of trunk of cars,
Yeah.
off of little street carts.
Street vendors, yep.
You have to look at, the consumer really should look at going to reputable dealers if you want to maximize your chances of not falling victim to counterfeit goods.
Right.
But even that is, we're finding because of technology and because of the pervasiveness of the issue, that's not going to guarantee you necessarily.
Right.
Certainly if you go to a Coach factory outlet store or a Coach store, you're going to get the authentic item.
Sure.
But otherwise, if you're going into to manufacturers who sell broadly to different retail establishments, you're going to lose some of that guarantee.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the statute. The statute is 266, section 147. As I indicated, it was put into law in 1998, and basically, if you want, I'll take it off the top. Whoever willfully manufactures, uses, and I emphasize the word uses, displays, advertises, distributes, offers for sale, sells, or possesses with the intent to sell or distribute any item or service bearing or identified by a counterfeit mark shall be punished. You want to go into those punishments?
Right. First thing to note is that if you look at the way if you were around back in 1998 and actually paid attention to how this legislation was being sponsored and developed, there was really no one questioning why it's not. I mean, you had the lobbyists from the industry coming in and saying,
we gotta have this.
And there was no other side. There was no one to come in and try to counterbalance that that zeal to getting this legislation passed. So you had certain words like uses. Well, what's uses? If you put on a T-shirt, are you using it? Are you possessing it?
Well, unless the law defines the word, then you take the use from the dictionary. So there's no definition of uses in this law.
No.
Uses means use.
If you have someone who's carrying a counterfeit shirt,
Displaying.
then they could be displaying it. But it's in a bag, then they may not be using it. But if they put it on, they're using it.
Correct.
So it's
wild.
that's one of the issues that
Wild.
as a defense attorney looking at it from that light, it's problematic. Also, you have in the statute a blatant statement that any person who has in possession, custody, or control of 25 items. Now, at face value, you might think, well, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
But if, let's say, you're going out and you're going to have a birthday party, and you want to get 25 favors. Like it could be something as minor as a little, as a Disney pencil or something with the a top on it, some little thing like that.
Sure.
It's easy to get 25 of them, 30, 40, 50. Now all of a sudden, if you're caught with them, not only are they seized, but you can be charged criminally with it. And the normal consumer, the average consumer, isn't looking to see the authenticity of the Little Mermaid, on the top of the pencil. If it looks like the Little if it looks like what it's Mickey Mouse, then it probably is Mickey Mouse. They're not looking into the trademark issue.
Exactly.
So the consumer can get caught up in that, regardless of their best intentions.
But I think to be fair, the police, at least in Massachusetts, and I think the feds as well, but the police in Massachusetts have really not gone there.
No, they haven't.
They've stayed away from people using it so far.
Yes, I think
Not that they have to, according to this law. But they are more after the traffickers than they are after the people who are buying it.
I think that's. I
Because
think it's accurate, and in a way, I think it's a good thing in a way that you kind of take the enforcement statute with a little bit of discretion. But that's not to say that it can't. Someone can't get caught up in something that it's a criminal matter.
Especially somebody that gives an interview to WCVB and admits that they basically was a user of the product.
Well, in that case there, she probably didn't have 25 bags that fell apart. So she may be free of that. But then
But
again,
we don't know that, do we?
We don't
Because
know.
she
We
talked
don't
about
know.
multiple.
And where she had a number of them, she certainly was using them, I suppose, because it's not to find out they fell apart. But
Yeah. So, okay, so if they have 25 items or more, but less than 100 items, first offense is?
first offense is up to 2.5 years in jail. So it's a misdemeanor. You won't go to prison on that. You go to House of Correction.
Right.
Neither place is a good place to do time.
Right,
But
right.
nonetheless, the 2.5 years is the maximum in House of Correction.
Yep.
Will anybody get that? I don't know. But that's the maximum you would get for the sale for violating with less than 100 items.
Yep.
And a first offense.
Right. First offense and, yeah, retail value of less than $100
Now, when it says retail value, that means
per.
the retail value that the counterfeiter is selling it for. It's not the retail value that,
Of what
that
it
the
would be if it was
industry
real.
is saying. When I had defending a case, the trademark holder was saying that this $1 item that was being sold by my client had a trademark value that would be had the same item being sold but authentic approved by them under their trademark.
Yep, yep.
It would have sold for 10 times that. So who's getting the raw end of the deal here? Is
Right.
the consumer who buys the little trinket at $1, or is it the one that goes out and gets the authentic item and pays 10 times the amount for it? Who's the real victim there? Is the consumer certainly wants. And a lot of consumers just aren't looking into it that well, but yet the statute doesn't account for that.
Right.
The
right.
industry again backed this,
Yep.
and again for some degree with good cause, but I think there's a lot of work to be done.
I
on the
agree.
statute.
And I think I haven't seen too many cases make it to the courts yet on this, but I assume as more raids like Lawrence take place, there probably will be. And in the case that you cite, I think you have two victims. I think you have the original trademark owner, and you have the person who bought it from the original trademark owner.
And
Those are
maybe-
two victims.
And maybe the retailer who didn't know it was a bootleg to begin with.
And that could be. So maybe you have three.
Given benefit of the doubt. I mean,
Right.
probably usually they may well know, but nonetheless, potentially it can be all three.
Yep. So as we step up from 100 items to 1,000 items, it's up to 5 years.
Now it's a felony.
Now it's felony and it's state time.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And then on a third offense, it's 10 years. So as you step up the ladder here, as a participant in this chain, it gets to be pretty serious.
It gets to be pretty serious, and now we've enacted or legislated a situation where you see now a trend where non-dangerous, where society is questioning certain drug offenses and putting people in jail for it costs money to put people in jail.
Right.
And they have to question again, the civil process that used to be in effect was a remedy to this in the first place. Now, putting a person in jail on the back of the taxpayer, I have to question how effective that's going to be. Are we just creating, becoming another situation where we're going to overpopulate a system already, where there are plenty of dangerous criminals that take up the time and resources as it is.
Right, right, at about 43,000 a year.
A year,
each.
yes, to hold someone like that.
Talk about the instrumentalities that you talk about that can be seized and forfeited, and what you mean exactly by forfeited. We're getting close to time, but I wanna get that out there because it's an important issue. Forfeited means the government's going to take it and do something with it. What are they going to do with it?
By statute, it could be turned over to the trademark holder, which means the trademark holder could take it if it's, let's say it's the Boston Bruins T-shirt. If it's okay with them, they can just put their official little sticker on it and turn around and sell it.
Right.
So
For,
what's the
for
consumer,
like 5 times
for
or
5
10
times the
as
price?
much or whatever.
So what's the consumer getting? In this case, in that example. Now, has that been done? I don't know of it being done, but could it be done by the? Absolutely could.
Under the law.
Again, because it's not always an issue of quality in this when you're talking about how the statute covers so many different things.
Okay, so you did mention that the enforcement arms, both federal and state, and also obviously local if they want to get involved in this, although I've never heard of that, but it's there, it's a law.
Saw in Lawrence, and certainly the case, I don't handle cases in federal court, but the case I had was a large case in the Superior Court in Suffolk County, and that was mainly state offices. And what's interesting to me is the way the raids are being conducted. They're involving ICE quite frequently, which is a task force, if you want to call it, that will that sort of goes into in a cooperative effort with state, local, and other federal officials, and they're looking at issues mainly about immigration. So I'm wondering, what's going on with this? What are the immigration implications on this whole thing, and where people are going to, if people are caught up in these sweeps, not only are they subject to criminal offenses, but now it's bringing up deportation and immigration issues on the same side, which kind of wraps it up into the whole quagmire we're into now with immigration reform. Is this going to complicate it or make it worse?
Well, there's definitely a connection there, but unfortunately we have run out of time, and I want to thank you again for coming on for your 99th time or whatever it has been, and coming up from Medford to do that. I want to thank all of you out there for watching, and hope this has been helpful to you. We will see you again next month when we're back with another show. Thanks for watching.